We are ready to recommence the testing on the ODS-1775. Today we've got about, what did we say, 1,600-ish rounds? Something like that. We're gonna run about 1,600 rounds through this gun, hopefully, as long as it doesn't blow up or anything like that. I'm not expecting that it will, but, you know, things do happen here. This is the Bermuda Triangle of firearms.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the VSO Gun Channel. Thanks for joining us here today. Continuing the saga of testing of the ODS-1775 from Occam Defense Solutions. If you guys missed the previous installments, I'll have them linked in the description box down below so that you guys can catch up with us if you so choose. But this time we ran about 1,600 rounds through the gun, and we had a very low incidence of malfunction. In fact, we're saying that the actual firearms malfunction rate was 0. We believe that all of the malfunctions that we had in this section of testing were user generated, I believe all by Bacon, actually.
That can actually make it really fine to be right here.
Really?
Yep. Yeah. I don't know if the camera can pick up where I'm at.
What number is that?
Is that a malfunction? What magazine were we just on?
40.
One more magazine.
What do we have?
740.
That's not playing for a second. I was like, whoa.
Bake 4. Die, Van. There are literally pieces flying off the van. Hey, hang on, wait a minute.
I think it's on fire.
No.
Huh.
And identify the malfunction.
Back in the mag.
Was that a user? Like, did you just
Assume that it stopped, probably.
The only one that was a little bit iffy was we had a situation where it might have been a shoulder bump fire. We're not entirely sure. If you guys are interested in viewing the full testing footage from our time on the range, then you can find that over on our Patreon and Subscribestar pages. It won't be behind a paywall or anything like that. It is my opinion that sort of thing should be freely available to you guys, so you can confirm that we did shoot all the rounds and the gun did indeed perform the way that we said it did. My hope being that even though it's not behind a pay portal, that you guys will consider contributing to the channel on those platforms.
That was me.
it was a bump fire?
But the gun did go 2 rounds when it was supposed to go 1. We're not entirely sure if that was, again, Bacon's fault or not. But as far as this gun is concerned, we'll just go ahead and run through the gun, how it's doing, all the parts. You probably have already seen some of the components roll up as far as the type pictures are concerned. The only thing that we did with this, in full disclosure on this, is we did send this back after the last section of testing to Occam Defense, because I'll be honest, I deviated from what we said we were going to do, in that I took the rail off, and their specification requires that they use new bolts each time the thing is put in. That's just their internal specification, and I use that as an excuse to not reassemble the gun. So I just basically bagged the whole thing up, sent it back to Occam. The one thing that we were looking to see if we could mitigate also why it was disassembled is this gun, straight from the factory, had Cerakote under the rail. And if you remember in the last installment, we had a little bit of procession in the rail, and we were concerned that that could eventually cause some kind of issues as far as interference up front. So what Brian did actually was change the surface finish of that to what they're currently producing, which is more of a blasted finish on the thing, and that then allows the rail to grip onto the barrel a little bit better. And I will say that that was very effective. We ran, again, 1,600-ish rounds. I'll have a full count on screen somewhere for you guys, but no procession in the rail. We made sure to measure it this time, and we did not have that issue this time around. We did take off the dead air Sandman during cleaning this time, and it needed a lot of help to get off. It has cooked all the finish off. There will be a full video on the Sandman K after we finish this run of the testing. The one thing I do want to note is that we did use a vertical grip this time, and we were using the kinetic development group quick detach thing, and it was coming off on recoil.
Had enough or what? Gave up.
Gave up the ghost.
We're not entirely sure if that is a problem with it hitting the heat shield inside and then being kicked off, or if that part has just been passed around to like several hundred guns and is starting to wear out. We're not entirely sure. As far as the rest of the rail is concerned, it's fine. We actually did take the aim point off this time and just tried to do a lot of it with the iron sights because we spent a little bit of time trying to zero it, and we could not really expend the attention span that we probably should have to zero the optics, so we just went with the irons. To the trunnion. The trunnion looks good. Maybe a little bit of a chip coming out of the secondary locking lug over on this side. It does not look like there's anything there that is of serious concern, and the thing does pass headspace. Strip bolt. Strip bolt is going into the AL-10 carrier there. No-go gauge. We use the no-go gauge because if it will pass on a no-go gauge, then there's definitely no way that it'll fail on a field gauge. This is kind of like an early warning. There is about 11 thousandths difference between the go gauge and the field gauge. And depending on the spec, this is the same gauge. The no-go gauge is somewhere in the middle. The no-go gauge is also only valid for measuring at new manufacturer, but again, we use it as a safety protocol for advance notice. We have a full video and write-up on how to properly headspace an AK on the website. And 20 kilograms is not a small amount of force, but as you can see, we did not close. Looks like we're doing good. This gun checks headspace. We're ready to move on to the next section. The primary locking lug looks absolutely immaculate, and going over to the bolt lugs as well, the lugs on the bolt, primary and secondary locking lugs, are looking absolutely beautiful, and I can actually see myself like it's a mirror, so that's good. Now, if you remember back to the last section where we stopped, we had some concerns about the bolt, and one of those major concerns was down here at the base, and you can see that there's basically a divot there, and that divot has now rounded itself off, so now it is basically a new contour in the bolt, and that's actually, in my opinion, better. Again, we had a very low incidence of malfunction this section around, so I don't think that that is something that is going to continue to progress, but we do have about 800 rounds left, so we will monitor that to see if it gets any worse. The other one that was a little bit concerning, but it didn't really inhibit the function any, is we had a small chip here on the rearward camming surface of the bolt, and it looks to be about the same. I think this is one of those ones that I'm actually going to throw up a before and after from the last section in this one, just so you guys can see what it is I'm talking about. We do have a lot of polishing here at the front where it picks up the cartridges. That's to be expected. The important thing is that this heat treat is proper and we're not seeing deformation. So if you look at your AK bolt and it's got like lots of little like indentations in it, that's an indicator that the bolt's too soft. So this just looks like it's been polished up. Like I bet you I can get it to shine in the light if I want to show you guys something down here. You'll notice the patterns on my hands where the soot is. Right underneath here on the trigger, there's a little bit of a gap right here. You can see that is a vent port, and it corresponds to that black spot right there. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure where that black one comes from. The only thing I can think is that it leaks out of the grip. So there is something on the bolt that I do want to discuss that I did not see last time, so I'm assuming that this is new, and this could be the parts basically working in, but this is my main concern about this gun. And it's a multifaceted presentation, but I'll get to it in as concise a point as I possibly can. So there is a flat spot on the bolt there, and that's a problem. The question is, where does it come from? So if you put the bolt back in the carrier sits in the gun like this, the gun fires, this gets drugged to the back, and then it comes back forward with the new cartridge and locks like that. You'll notice that that flat spot there isn't in the position where the hammer hits the carrier. So normally what we will see is if you've got issues with the carrier deforming and then the C there at the back closing down on the bolt, normally you'll see that towards the back and it'll polish up and then create an interference. Well, this is polishing a little bit, but it's not creating any interference. We don't see that here up front because you'll notice the taper there, it's designed to literally roll off. The problem with that is, you'll notice when this thing is camming back forward, it is in this position. So the bolt head is extended, and you notice that flat spot there is exposed when the thing is running back forward because it's being basically driven forward in this orientation. That hammer is then going to slip off of that notch there as it reaches the disconnector, and it's going to come up and smack the bottom of that bolt. And if you look closely at the contours of that flat spot, you can look and tell that it has been made by individual impacts. It's wavy. It looks like an unskilled blacksmith came in and hit it with a hammer a whole bunch of times. And that's exactly what that is. That is caused by the hammer setting and then coming up and smacking basically the bottom of the bolt. And continuing with the damage to the carrier, you can see there that we've got some serious deformation on the carrier tail there. All of that is caused by the ALG trigger being too hard. And we pointed this out from the very beginning. I think it's like 20 points off of where it's supposed to be as far as the spec is concerned. I understand they don't want their part to wear and things like that, but the ALG trigger is too hard. I'm just going to say that definitively. Looking at how it's performing in this gun that I trust is properly heat treated, and I can see where they've gone through and done Rockwell testing. They've done surface hardness on this carrier, and I would assume that it's in spec. I'm sure that I can probably get the data from Brian to show that it's in spec. Maybe we'll roll that in next time. But this carrier and this bolt are hitting something hard, much harder than they are, and it's starting to cause damage to the components. So my suggestion, and unfortunately this comes without a solution, my suggestion to Occam Defense is to move away from the ALG trigger. I know it's the hotness, and it's, you know, it's a very fast trigger. In my opinion, it's too light. You guys remember back to the first one where we were getting like a 2.5 pound pull. In my opinion, it's too light, but some people really like it. There aren't a whole lot of alternatives out there for a good quality trigger in an AK right now, but I would say that this is not compatible. I mean, you can continue to mitigate this over time. Like, this gun is going to continue to run for perpetuity, but it is going to wear out parts because of that stupid hammer. Coincidentally, we do not see two things. First is serious damage to the actual bolt tail there, where it's actually the travel stop for the hammer. So the hammer comes in full force, hits the firing pin. The back of the firing pin is not damaged, and then the excess force is depleted into the back of the bolt. We also don't have any deformation here at the front, which would say that there's excess energy being depleted into the front of the channel. So basically the firing pin is being launched far forward too hard, and it sets off the primer, and then the rest of it is basically bottoming out into the head of the channel of the bolt. That's not happening. We would see that present itself as basically some degradation around this, or it would also look like that bulbous end there was elongating itself. We don't see either of those things, so this is in pretty good shape. So again, I'm beating up on the ALG trigger a little bit. It is the source of some of the damage that we're seeing, but we're not seeing like systemic, like life cycle ending problems here. It's just that this is going to, if this was all commie stuff that was properly heat balanced and all that sort of stuff, instead of using the American part, then we would probably see a longer life of this gun before parts needed to be replaced. I have no idea what that is. I'm going to tell you that it's probably not going to be 5,000 rounds. It's probably going to be more like 20 or 30,000, but at just the rate that we're going. But so far, so good.
Fucking mag pull.
No, that's literally what it says on the side of it.
Fucking mag pull.
Well, guys and gals, that about wraps it up for us on this stop of the ODS-1775. We have a couple hundred rounds left to shoot. We're going to do that, and in that testing, we're also going to redo the die chem test, see how the bolt is balancing now that we've shot 5,000 rounds through it, as well as do like final accuracy and stuff of the like. So if you guys enjoyed this video, or if you're really seriously considering something like the ODS-1775, please sound off in the comment section down below and tell all your friends. Thanks for joining us here on the VSO Gun Channel. Hopefully we'll see you guys on a future video.